The Failure Hypothesis is a Meledro digital production. If you're interested in making business content with interest or want to tell your story in a future episode, you can contact us at meledrodigital.com.
Hi, my name is Vivian Chan, and you're listening to The Failure Hypothesis. Over the course of this podcast series, I'm going to be talking to some of the most interesting leaders from all around the world. From Brazil to the UK, from India to America, all about failure. We'll be testing the simple hypothesis that radical honesty about failure is the secret to success. But is it really that simple? Sometimes, is it better to just keep moving forward? Why can't we just think like a rocket scientist when it comes to failure? To help us find out the answer to these questions and more, we've assembled a dream team of guests that includes the chief scientist of a global tech company, the president of a major record label, a private equity titan, and a Webby Award-winning podcaster. For new listeners who want to learn more about the failure hypothesis and the timeless mission to get the leaders of today and tomorrow all talking more openly about failure, please check out episode 1, wherever you get your podcasts. My guest today is Chris Hitchins, UK Managing Partner of Katten Law. One of America's top law firms, Katten is still relatively new to the UK market, but under Chris's leadership, is firmly establishing itself as a force to be reckoned with within the extremely competitive London and UK market. Alongside his leadership responsibilities, Chris has a thriving personal practice, which combines his extensive experience in employment and corporate law with a focus on advising businesses on how to grow, enhance their reputation, and improve their culture. Chris has a CV you might expect from a high-powered city lawyer. Starting at the blue-blooded Slaughter and May, Chris has worked for a collection of prestigious law firms with the sterling reputations including Latham & Watkins, Lewis Silkin, and Morgan Lewis. Chris has been recognized as a leading individual in his field by Chambers UK and the Legal 500. But behind the CV is something less expected, a disarmingly frank and plain-speaking lawyer who, as they might say in American politics, you can imagine yourself having a beer with. He's also the type of person you turn to in a crisis or when complexity threatens to overwhelm. That's exactly why clients from international charities to multi-billion-dollar asset managers and from exclusive hotels to tech startups rate him so highly. Welcome! I think today is going to be a very interesting day to both me to learn a little bit more about yourself and for you to share your story and your journey. Some successes, but I really want to dig into the failures.
Plenty of those to choose from. So thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity, as they
Definitely. The floor is over to you. Where do you want to start?
I will start. I think I will set the scene as to what it means to be a lawyer in the City of London. And it's changed massively. So I started in 1997. Mm-hmm. As you say, started at Slaughter and May. At the time, and it still is probably, Slaughter and May used to market itself as the city law firm. It's a very competitive market. Everybody knows Slaughter and May as a blue-blooded firm. Very, very good at what they do. I was very lucky to get a job there. I didn't have many choices of jobs, but it doesn't matter because the one that you get is the one that people remember. I didn't have any other options in London as it happened.
Was that a grad position?
Yeah, it was out of law school. So you apply. It's very competitive out of law school. I had a job from an offer from Eversheds in Birmingham. I'm from Birmingham. A lot of people from my school stayed in Birmingham at the time, and Eversheds was a good fit for that. Slaughter and May was my only London option. And my grandfather, who had once had a meeting at Slaughter and May, basically said, you'd be mad not to come to London and work for Slaughter and May. So I didn't really give it much more thought than that. Really, any advice was good advice. So here I am and stayed down here. So, you started at Slaughter and May, and it was a very intimidating atmosphere because people are very good at what they do. And I was so green, so naive. I hadn't really given the practice of law much thought. It was probably just a bit of a assumption that you come out of a private school, go to university, and you feel like it's a natural progression. But you suddenly realise that I'm out of my depth here. There are people here who are very good at what they do, and I do not understand the workings of the city, and I don't really know how I've got this job. So it was quite intimidating, and stressful, and long hours as a result. But hindsight, loved it. Absolutely loved it. So happy that I've been there. But the changing point for me was when I had an opportunity to do a seat as part of my training in Hong Kong. I spent 6 months with one of my best mates who was also a trainee with me. Both got the nods to go out to Hong Kong at the same time. Coincided with one of my school friends and his firm. He was out in Hong Kong, and a bunch of other people we knew very well. So it was, from a social perspective,
it was
amazing. It was the hardest I had worked in my time there, but the social scene was fantastic.
Was it because the working culture is different?
The working culture is different. The main thing for me was it was a smaller office, and it was, rather than being part of, I don't know what size Slaughters was at the time, 500, 600 people. You are a small cog in a massive machine, and you get on and do your job extremely well, and woe betide you if you don't. Whereas there were maybe 30 people or so, and it was just roll your sleeves up, but a real feel of, well, we're all in this together. So I much preferred that environment. So when I came back to London and I qualified there and stayed there for another year, I guess I felt that there was something that I wasn't resonating with me, because I was still feeling very, very out of my depth. So at that time in 2000, US law firms were starting to open up in London, and of course they could pay, well, double almost at the time. And there's a lot of lawyers were starting to look around. Some went into recruitment because they felt that they had a bit more control, a bit more reward over bringing people in. And quite a few went to US law firms, and I was no different. I had a look around at some US law firms, and I was very attracted to Latham & Watkins, who at the time I was lawyer number 32 in London. But what won me over there was I was interviewed by my peers, and in a lawyer of 30-something people in the office, I would have met 10, 12 of them as part of that interview process, which just was a light bulb moment for me. And I just thought that made a lot of sense, because you're taking people at a stage in their career when they've got the most energy, that they really want to sell it, and they really want you to come in, and you could see that they're like you, they've had the same journey, the background, and I was a bit worried about that, but it's not like that. It's fine. Actually, it's a bit easier. Hang on, you get paid more, it's a bit easier. That's good. And that idea just won me over. And actually, even in the 8 years that I was there, even though it grew to something like 300 lawyers in London by the time I left, and became an international success, which was fortunate for me, because the reason why I joined was to be part of something that I could input into the growth. So I had 8 years at Latham, and the career path for a lawyer is you're a trainee for 2 years, you qualify as a lawyer, and then nothing for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So 25 years ago, you could make partner within 6 years of qualifying. That's changed these days. It's more like 10 or 11 or 12. But you always knew if you didn't make partner by 7 or 8 years, then you'd been overlooked. And if you were overlooked, some firms would say, well, you should keep on looking, but somewhere else, off you go. Or you might have some sort of 2-year chance to make partners. So, and all your peers from law school are getting partnerships or in the running, or they've moved firms in order to get partnership, or some haven't had to move firms because they're stellar and they can make partner at that firm. If you don't make partner and you're in a cohort of 30 to 50 lawyers in the class of 96 at Chester Law School, then amongst your peers, you want to be making partner around the same time. You don't want to be the outlier. So So you feel that external pressure, peer pressure. And also, in my case, I hadn't, I suppose, really thought about it deeply enough other than to think it was some sort of natural progression that would happen, because being to a public school, independent school in Birmingham, I had gone to sort of May, done well in my public exams, so of course I would make partner, you know.
Yeah.
And they don't focus on, because there was no career progression for 8 years. You were just a qualified lawyer. You were never benchmarked against would you ultimately be a partner or not. Now, privately, people might have made their minds up 8 years ago and not told you, and it wasn't really in their interest to tell you you're not really.
Yeah, because they
partner
want you to
material.
continue working for them.
Exactly, they want to get the money's worth and pound of flesh along the way. So there is that culture, I think, within law of just telling people you're doing a good job, and not actually
being honest about
telling them the truth about it. And then that can cause problems on the way out. So for me, I suppose my reviews were good, but it was never focused on promotion, because promotion was always, you know, we'll talk about promotion in 6 years' time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when they did talk about promotion in 6 years' time, I wasn't going to get made a partner, but I was given some other promotion, which was a sort of a waiting room in those days of 2 years, another title, but you can be
like an interim or
a
deputy. Or
they call it.
Okay.
It means different things at different firms, so it's a bit unfair to use it as a label. But it's they call it counsel or off counsel, which in those days was you don't have the business case to be made partner, so spend 2 years, build a business case.
But what defines a business case to make partner?
I know it now, but I didn't know it then.
Okay.
They used to say, you'll know it when you see it. Well, I don't know it. I'm not seeing it. So
it's very subjective, no?
Yeah, but then you said, well, you've got to behave like a partner. I was, what is that?
What does that mean?
Walk
you
around
dress
with,
like one? You gotta
just stamp around and with heavy shoes. It's silly. It's obvious to me now. You work out the financial metrics of the firm, how much the firm is trying to make per lawyer that is there, whether the work that you do will support the rates that they need to charge, whether it's critical for the growth of a particular client or a particular practice. Is it scalable? Are you a blockage for somebody else because you're a good person but you haven't got the skills to develop it anymore, but she's like Stella and she's 2 years behind you, so actually you move away and she should come through. So it's a combination of things, but I wasn't mature enough to understand it and didn't really think it through from a economics and a business perspective. So I think
were you like when they told you, oh, not right now, but we'll move you to council?
Yeah.
How did you feel?
I was sitting in a car park in Ballymena with my wife on a typically rainy Northern Irish day, and I think I was embarrassed. Was I on speakerphone or I think it was. That would have been a bit rude. I was embarrassed in front of her because I'd always probably implied that, you know, I'll be able to do this and you know, we'll all be fine financially and blah, blah, blah. So I was embarrassed in front of her. I was upset, but indignant, angry, you know, that sort of, I'll show them sort of thing, rather than what exactly is it that they want you to do and how would they like you to react, because actually that message is, somebody said congratulations to me a week later and I thought, you know, that's a bit, you know, whatever, but she meant it. It was a promotion, and I'd seen it as a slap in the face.
It wasn't a success. It wasn't the success that you expected.
And it almost I expected it because I've almost felt it was not an entitlement or whatever, but I hadn't queried that it wouldn't happen. So, whereas the proper reaction is, okay, well now, what do I need to do to demonstrate a business case and develop my business, and who's going to support me to do that, because there were a lot of people there who would have done. But I took the news in a sort of petulant and bearing a grudge way and sort of carried it around with me for 6 months until it pissed people off, I think.
But you said the business case was very subjective.
Yeah, but it's developing all the time. So I started as a corporate lawyer, then I changed to become an employment lawyer, and that it was a wonderful opportunity that wouldn't have been afforded to me somewhere else. So I benefited from that, and very grateful that I had that opportunity, and they supported me to do that. So as a result, it then put me in a different pool from. I wouldn't have succeeded as a corporate lawyer and made partner as a corporate lawyer. I knew that at the time because I wasn't good enough at the corporate law. Yeah. I didn't understand the things I needed to understand, and my peers there were a lot better than me. Mm-hmm. So partly defensively, but partly because of I gravitated more to the subject matter. I chose to do employment law. So, but then that puts me in a different pathway because firms not done employment law before. So how do we make someone partner in a business area that's not core to what we do? Yeah. Doesn't make as much money. Do we even want to be doing it? We're only doing it because we wanted to keep this guy happy. So, and I didn't have the experience to be able to see it in those terms. I just felt that, well, why shouldn't I be?
And I guess those 6 months was what you saw as a failure, the whole experience as a failure. You started pivoting and realizing.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and it wasn't. Well,
in hindsight.
I'd say it wasn't. I mean, that's self-preservationist. It's I didn't make partner. Would I have made partner if I'd have stuck around? Don't think so. Because
would you want to make partner in corporate law?
Not in corporate, no. As I was doing something slightly different at the time. So there was a lady coming up behind me who was better at doing the area that I was trying to make partner in than I was or would have been. So so they made the right business choice, but would there have been room for two of us?
Yeah, and if we're circling back to what you thought was a failure moment, which in hindsight really isn't, but you enabled the flexibility to then start to carve yourself to be the maverick in Latham, to actually start to look at
Top Gun Maverick. Not an idiot making that comparison. Not intentional,
law, right?
Not intentional.
Where they're like,
well,
I don't know if that's what we wanted to do, right?
Yeah, well, I was when I decided that I had to leave Latham because I didn't feel that the 2-year path or then 18-month path that I was on I didn't feel that at the end of that I would necessarily get made a partner.
Okay, right. At what point did you know?
Somebody said to me, so they told me 6 months before I was made counsel, you're going to be made counsel. So 6 months of kicking the cat. And then on January the 1st, you're now counsel. Yes, I know. Have to rub it in. And somebody said to me after about 3 months, she said, look, I sit on the panel of people who get promoted from counsel to partner, and just so you know, the minimum requirement is 2,100 hours, which translates to whatever, 10, 11, 12 hours chargeable a day. And so you need to be in that ballpark in order to not just get bounced out of the process. That was great advice because
it's clarity.
Yeah. And in what I was doing, it was quite hard, even with the best one in the world, to find those hours. And that was the business case. It wasn't work shy, lack of willingness to knuckle down and do those hours. I can't physically find files that I can charge X £100 an hour to that extent continually. Even if I can, I can't find enough for somebody else to do the same. So I can't grow it to get 4,200 hours, 6,300 hours, whatever. I can't. So it wasn't there. So I was in a rare moment of maturity, but because of that clarity, I suppose, I figured out, look, it's not going to happen. So I felt good about being in control of the next opportunity. So I got a job as a partner at Morgan Lewis. So making partner from not being a partner was quite hard. But the transition on paper looked wonderful because it had a real theme and story to it that I could sell to myself, which I think was important, because I think you continually, particularly when you get to middle age, you're very revisionist in, well, I did this because of this, I did this because of this. Did you really? Did you? Or are you just now drawing a theme to justify why you've been booted from that firm and you didn't make it at this one, and actually people are quite glad that you left. And the theme was that at Latham there were only a handful of employment lawyers globally. It was an add-on to a very successful firm doing other things. At Morgan Lewis, it was a market-leading standalone practice in its own right in the US. So I was joining a firm where what I did was internationally recognized as what part of what the firm did, not exclusively that, but it's and even now it's still, you know, number one ranked in the US for employment law. So what particularly attracted to me to the firm, very charismatic other partner who I'd met at a training event a few years back, and I gravitated towards him. But it was a small office. There were 32. I was lawyer number 32 again. I thought there's a perfect symmetry to that. And, you know, if we can grow this to 295 lawyers, the same as Latham, then this is great. And that resonated with them. It resonated with me. And so anyway, my time in Morgan Lewis, I joined as a new partner. And I had deep down always, since my 6-month stint in Hong Kong at Slaughters, I had realized that a small firm environment where you're looking to try and grow something with a point and a purpose. So it's great to be at the stellar name, the big name, the top of the tree, the best. You get called up to play for Manchester United or Manchester City or Liverpool, then, you know, there ain't no way down up from there. That's it. You've got to hold on. If you don't win, it's failure. Yeah. I don't feel comfortable in those environments because, for various reasons, I think it's hard work. I don't like the sacrifice that comes with it, the family sacrifice, the work-life dynamic. I think you have to be quite focused and driven, but your family dynamic has to support that and has to be very open that that's what you're going to do. And I didn't want that, so I haven't sought that out, but I'm very attracted to the team that's in the middle of the league that can point to success and say, oh, look, we're now top 5. And that effort has come from all of us because we've collectively elevated it to something that it couldn't have been on its own. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are attracted to that idea. I'll say to people when they join here, it could all be bullshit. You join here and we're selling this growth story, selling this opportunity, and you think, oh, that's great because I didn't get that at my old firm. And you're asking my advice? Well, I've only just qualified. Why do you want to know my advice? Well, there's things that you might do at your firm that you just think is second nature that we don't do. Why aren't we doing it? It might be bullshit because it might not take off to the degree that I want it to, and our firm would like it to. But that's what drives us to succeed. So
these sounds like great series of success stories, like on CV paper.
Well, on CV paper, it's all revisionist. Well, so at Morgan Lewis, I became the other partner who I said gravitated to was he left about a year after I joined. But culturally, the environment then was very, very challenging. It was a lot of people in London who didn't have enough work for themselves in an environment where if you didn't have a lot of work, you were a failure because you hadn't generated it. And of course I had joined, I thought I joined to become the second partner in the team to help grow the team, take it to the next level. That wasn't the narrative that had been spun about me before I joined. There was somebody in the team who I knew, who had been told I was joining to do an area of work that wouldn't challenge her progression. but I did exactly the same work as she did, and she knew that, and I knew that, and I had a conversation. Well, we do the same work, but that wasn't what she'd been told. So she was missold why I was there, and that caused a cultural dynamic which needn't have happened. And the amount of work that I was going to bring with me had been missold internally as well. So the expectations on me were a lot higher than I had on myself, and also what was realistic.
But it sounds like you already have really high expectations of yourself.
Well, right? I hadn't clocked the common theme that this is said to me at Morgan Lewis. Somebody said, "Look, if you're making the money, they leave you the F alone," and that's what it's all about in the business of law. Is that you've got to find ways to make money at the right price points with the right cost base, and etc. And I still hadn't clocked that, and when I wasn't bringing in enough work, it became culturally quite difficult. It wasn't a happy environment anyway. There were lots of conversations behind closed doors, people crying regularly. I saw my role as being this cultural savior because I like teams, I like growing teams, I want to have open conversations, and I found myself being drawn towards conversations behind closed doors, and it became quite toxic, and anyway, it was all didn't have the maturity to really address what was going on that I would hopefully now have. Ultimately, the other partner left, and I became the head of the group. So now on paper, look at this. This is amazing. This makes a lot of sense. But from there on, I fluffed my lines really, because I was 35, 36, head of the London employment team, and we brought in another partner who was more senior than me. And I said to the guys in the States, I'm assuming you would like him to head the team because he's more senior. He has more business. So the penny was starting to drop that actually you need to have business in order to walk the walk. And they said, no, we'd like you to do it. I thought, oh, okay. So I focused really on the cultural side to the detriment of what was really needed to be done. And it became even more toxic, and the environment became even more destabilizing under my leadership, because what the firm should have said was actually the other guy should be the head of the group, and I think would have been delighted with that, because I would have then understood my role was to knuckle down and make money and keep my nose clean. So I misread the tea leaves, and ultimately it became such a difficult environment on a daily basis that nobody really wanted to go into the office. We ended up, people weren't really talking to each other. They'd have team meetings, they'd be staring at the floor. It was just toe curling. It was horrible. But that was on my watch. So ultimately I was responsible for that failure. I went to a partners conference in 2010, and on the way to the bathroom, I blacked out and hit my head.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And had a brain hemorrhage, and that put me out of action for 6-7 months. And when I came back from that,
do you know why you blacked out? Was it from
exhaustion? I do. As
from...
of last week. This was 12 years ago. As of last week, I do.
Oh. Okay.
But for the last 12 years, despite all of the investigations, I didn't. And at the time, I felt very much that the environment that I was in, the stress that I was putting myself under because I hadn't managed the team in the way that I felt that, this was my calling in life. I felt that contributed, because after all the tests, they didn't get to the bottom of why I blacked out. The brain hemorrhage was because it hit my head on the floor. Yeah. Now a bit deaf and can't smell, and et cetera, et cetera. But the blacking out they didn't get to the bottom of, but I now know. And it's linked. The bathroom is a common theme.
Well, now you've got answers, right?
Yeah, it was great when it happened. Well, it wasn't great for the people around me last week, but anyway.
But then you actually was out of action for 6 or 7 months.
So the first full week I was back, I had my appraisal, and the first thing they said to me was, "Your hours are low." Excuse me, I haven't been here. Odd. And the penny dropped there. It's like, okay, you don't want me here anymore. And that was a real. It's right now. The trouble is, when you have a brain hemorrhage, I'm talking generalization. When I had a brain hemorrhage, it affected my frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe controls emotion. It controls rationalization. You can't be empathetic. You misread situations. You get very angry. You don't handle stress very well, and you generally become a very unpleasant person to come around. But I genuinely believe that what was happening, and my reaction to a situation was the right one, because my instinct as an employment lawyer is to read that situation and advise on it. Couldn't do that anymore. Couldn't advise without getting the situation wrong. Not getting the law wrong, just getting the situation wrong, including with respect to my own career. So all of the politics that I was in and trying to badly manage, you be out for 7 months. You can't just rock up and then expect the politics not to have shifted in a different direction. So I realised that I had to leave, and I had to find something pretty quickly, otherwise they'd be kicking me out. So
were you stressed or relieved?
No, I was angry. I think I was angry that the conversation was in code, because the beauty of the condition that I had was I had no filter, so I was able to say things without. It's a bit psychopathic, I suppose, but it was you could say something, you didn't have to tread on eggshells anymore. You could just say, for example, you in a performance review, you could say your performance isn't very good. You wouldn't have to sugarcoat it. But you could say things, and I hadn't realised that at the time. But when I moved firms to a wonderful cultural environment, which was exactly what I needed, and for a time there, I retained that ability to be able to say something in a room of 20 or 30, which was I now call elephant in the room. I haven't coined it. I'm not some. People say elephant in the room, but I was able to say elephant in the room, call it out without any fear of or that it might impact my career to say it.
Yeah.
And I used to say it and sort of like sit back and go, see how that. And I love that, because it was refreshing. Because and when I started to, it was like I used to think it was a superpower. So when that sort of waned, and I started to become a bit more diplomatic and then a bit more. Don't want to get people feeling uncomfortable.
So you use a very clear face.
Yeah, so I lost it. I'm trying to get it back again because
the Chris
it's healthy.
And then coming back.
Yeah, to the minus 2.0. When I was told your hours are low and I figured out I needed to leave, I probably didn't react particularly well, but I didn't. I knew I had to leave, but I knew I had to find a culture that was as stress-free as the practice of law could be. And I found that.
I was going to ask, is that possible?
The firm I went to, Lewis Silkin, was and is a wonderful group of people. So it was, and because I hadn't started as an employment lawyer, I always felt in the back of my mind, employment lawyers are better than me. My wife's an employment lawyer. She qualified as an employment lawyer. She's better than I am at employment law, and she has done it from the junior age. I hadn't, so I was always trying to backfill that, and always areas that I felt I had a blind spot. So by going there, 100 employment lawyers, you learn through osmosis that somebody else is working on something. I okay, I'm glad I've learned that now through you. I haven't had to do it, but I can see how that all works. So that was a tremendous learning experience for me. And this, surround yourself with people who are better than you. But it was exactly that. These were talented practitioners who readily shared what they did for the common good, making everybody better. But culturally, it was just the right environment for me to be able to rehabilitate. The only pressure was on that I put on myself. They wanted me to generate a certain amount, and what I could generate fitted within their profit margin, so it was all fine. It was all very, very good. Yeah, it was great. But I lost that superpower of during the time I was there, being able to be honest and call out the elephant in the room.
The culture was too nice?
I think because it just got better. And I didn't want to. No, because I then started to feel that if I did say something and it made people uncomfortable, so why would you want to make people uncomfortable in an environment that people are very comfortable? So I started to. Empathy came back.
So it sounds like from a lot of your stories, influencing positive culture is very important to you. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I think it is. And I had a light bulb moment a month or so ago when my wife's given me a box of things I need to sort out, which are personal effects and what have you. Not getting divorced or dying or anything like that, but it's old letters that I'd written. I had a year off between school and university. I was in South Africa, and I wrote to my grandmother a lot. And I was flicking through one of them, and I'd written at the age of 19 to her. It's bizarre because I was never this emotionally open on a talking basis, but I obviously felt the need in the letter to put it down and saying, when I grow up, I want to be in charge of a small, I would say use the word office, but a small office environment that is looking to grow and I can influence its growth. And I thought, a bit odd. I don't remember writing that, and must have believed it at the time, but that's exactly what I have sought through my career move. I've been in the environments that are market leading and it's tough, and I couldn't cope. I did 10 years in that environment, happy to work very long hours and hard and blah blah blah. So it's not so much that I couldn't cope, but I didn't want that environment. There's more to life to me than that. But you could look at it in another way and go, well, actually you can't influence that environment unless you're the highest biller, you're working 100 hours harder than everyone else, or you're bringing in millions of dollars more than somebody else. That only then, normally in a law firm, do you then get to dictate culture and make change. And to get to that is extremely hard. And I would not, still have not, got to that level. So it's slightly self-preservation, is to put yourself in an environment where you can influence it, where the bar is lower at the moment, and then you raise the bar to a level with your lords and masters, to the level that is the right level. But you have to be ambitious, and of course the ambition is to raise the bar as high as, or higher than those other people, but maybe don't tell them that.
Yeah. And so now, fast forward to present day, it sounds like you are able to create that culture here.
Absolutely. It's a big part of what we're trying to achieve, that it's such a challenging market. It's very difficult to recruit. It's very difficult to retain. It's very difficult to win clients. It's very difficult to differentiate, or even to copy. It takes a lot of resource, a lot of time and effort, and it's hard enough as it is doing it on your own if people don't have that clarity of purpose of why they're here. So a big driver for me is everybody here understands what we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to do it for, and why, and what their role is. We've got 73, we've got 3 joining on Monday, so let's call it 76 people now. And everyone who joins on day one, I will have the same conversation with. And look, this is what you've told us you're here to do. This is how your career path can map out. And this is what success represents to me and to the people who hired you. And what you told us success represented to you. So if there's a disconnect we'll have that conversation as we go along. But let's not try and aim for something that you can't achieve, and then not make eye contact with me for the next 2 years. Or if you feel that we're missing a trick and we can be more ambitious than we've laid out, then tell us what you need. If you need us to go and hire more people, you need more resource over here, you need better technology, then please get that on the radar screen and we will make it happen. It's the environment that you can come here, you can change it by having a good idea and running with it. And you may get pushback from the first person you speak to because hasn't been done that way before. You may get pushback from the second person you speak to because they think that it can't be done that way because somebody advised them a few years ago. But nobody will mind you asking, and nobody will bemoan you asking the third person and going, oh, it can be done. Well, but I have to do it. I'm not going to do it. You can do it. And away you go. And that, taking those ideas that you've seen elsewhere, because everyone is a lateral, apart from the trainees who that's their first job, everyone else has been somewhere else. So that they'll have push factors, but they'll have pull factors. The pull factors are the growth, the autonomy, the ability to shape your career within the confines of what we do. The push factors may be a toxic culture. It may be they couldn't have got promoted where they were because there was a pecking order. It may be because of some harassment or discrimination or something that wasn't quite right. But we can offer that safe environment with that clarity of purpose, and you've got the resources and the tools that it's tough, but we will provide you with what you need, and then you've got a long enough runway to go and do it. And continue to have that dialogue. And I think that's what I wanted.
What do you think failure means in terms of the legal industry?
I think that there's a stigma attached to not achieving a partnership position, or achieving a partnership position at a firm which isn't the firm that you started at, or with the same sort of environment or reputation that the firm that you started at, which is not fair, but it certainly existed in my time. And I think for the people who move, because there's sort of two, you either qualify it and make partner at the firm that you started at, and you never move, and you've only ever seen one working environment, and you subscribe to that as the only way to practice law, or you move. And if you move once, you may keep on moving. Mm-hmm. If you keep on moving, the stigma is, oh, he's a rolling stone, or she can't make partner here, so if she hasn't made partner at those three firms, then why should we hire her? Or she's not right for us because she gets restless, or there must be something wrong with him. There's very much that you look at a CV and you're like, he's on his fifth law firm, so what's the story there? And people won't hire you. And it could have been the case that you developed late, or you just didn't find the culture that you were after, or you didn't get the support, or you suddenly have a client base that you didn't have 5 years ago. So the whole host of reasons. So there's moving firms or not getting promoted at a time that your peers are definitely throws a lot of questions, and people will perceive that would be a failure, but it's difficult to justify and holds you back.
Yep. Well, can I share the hypothesis of our failure hypothesis podcast and see if you are a believer or a skeptic? So I'll read it out to you now. Our greatest failures are our most important experiments. Yet emotion often prevents us from examining and learning from these unexpected outcomes. There is constant pressure to celebrate success and hide failure. However, if we practice radical honesty and have the strength to be vulnerable, then we can turn our failures into the secret of our success and help others do the same. Are you a believer or a skeptic?
I am a believer.
Woohoo!
with some qualifications now. I think that if you are too flippant about failure, you advertise the fact that you have failed. You fail to acknowledge that a bit of self-promotion can set the tone. Then if you give the impression that failure's acceptable, or that you don't care, or that you don't mind getting something wrong, people aren't going to gravitate towards you as somebody who can be a leader, or who's somebody who can be a safe pair of hands in what they do. So I think, for me, revisionist history of being able to look back and say, well, that point was a turning point. I've learned from this, I've learned from that. Everybody fails at something in some regard. Those who maybe lack the self-awareness or self-confidence to acknowledge it as a failure, that suits them, it works for them, that's fine. If you are more self-aware and you can say, well, that didn't go according to plan, or that, was slightly embarrassing, there's no doubt that you become more clear on what it is you're trying to achieve, and what you can achieve, and what maybe your purpose is. That what is it that you can do, not better than everyone else, but you can do quite well, and it actually matches what you happen to be doing. And you can then be interested in that theme and start to read about it. So absolutely, you can and you must learn from the failures. You must identify those failures, maybe not at the time, but in a revisionist way. I do dwell on them in a sporting context, but I haven't played sport properly for 20-something years, but I'm still miffed about certain things that didn't go my way. I would just not let it drop, even now. But in the business sense, no, because I'm self-preservationist. Because of my accident, I preserve myself from that sort of stress where if I don't achieve something, it's going to cause, it won't do, but I thought maybe at the time it might have caused the accident to happen again. So I think it's important to put things in perspective, but not to dwell, not to dwell so that you're not then looking forward and you're not then just focusing on what you can control. But on the whole, you're much better off reflecting and learning. For me, reflecting and learning on what didn't go the way that you wanted to. Otherwise, you're putting the wool over your own eyes, and starting to write your own narrative rather than listening to what other people are saying in the direction of travel. So I'm a believer.
Thank you, Chris, for being so honest and sharing your story today. We dived in a lot about your past, and you just mentioned being able to move forward. So what else is it that you're currently working on or in the future that you want to share?
Yeah, my daughter's doing her GCSEs, two other daughters, and that's a big part of our lives. Professionally, I need to be able to look back on my career and make a success of what I'm currently doing. So everything to date has pointed towards this opportunity that I now have. If I cock it up, then I'm going to have a hard time explaining to myself in 5 years, 10 years' time, I made the most of the opportunities that I was given through my upbringing. So there's a lot of pressure I'm putting on myself to make a success of what we're doing here. Now, what success looks like it is tempered by what I've been through, and also what is realistic. I don't want to set goals that are unobtainable. I don't want to set goals that are unrealistic, but I want to set stretch targets, and I want to be ambitious, and I want it to be fun. I want it to grow. I want to be able to point to individuals who have made a success of their career here, and they've been here for a length of time that they can then pass it on to other people. So I want to see that succession. I want to see that that growth, that I've helped to create a platform where that can happen. That to me would be success. And that has to be headcount growth. It has to be revenue growth. It has to be doing the exciting deals, working on matters that people have heard of, the PR, the inclusion, the diversity, women in leadership. All of that is an important part of what we are, but those are just words. You've got to be able to actually deliver that, something tangible. So that is the direction of travel. Watch this space.
Very exciting. Well, I will be cheering you on the sideline, and also as a Failure Hypothesis alumni. Thank you once again for joining the show, and thank you to all our listeners.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to The Failure Hypothesis with me, Vivian Chan. To hear other inspiring stories from unique leaders, please subscribe to The Failure Hypothesis on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A few months after Chris's interview with Vivian, the Failure Hypothesis caught up with him again, fresh off a major win at the British Legal Awards.
So, as regular listeners to the show will know, we love to catch up with our alumni, particularly at high points, as we did with the formidable Jamie Morton in New York. And today we are here with our latest guest, Chris Hitchins, the Managing Partner of Katten UK. After a particular high point a few days ago, Chris led his team to a major win at the British Legal Awards. So, first of all, can you tell us a bit about what you won and the night?
Delighted to, yes. We won the Transatlantic Firm of the Year at the British Legal Awards, which was the only category that we put a submission into.
100% success.
100% success. Strike rate 1 out of 1.
And possibly my favourite ocean as well. So
there you
congratulations
go.
doubly.
Yes. It was, somebody had said to us that you don't win the first time you put in a submission. They like to keep you hanging on for a couple of years. So delighted to win that.
Well ahead of schedule. So in your episode with Vivian, you talked a lot about building the right culture and how there'd been a moment where you presided over a culture that wasn't, in accordance with what you'd wanted to build. To what extent do you credit this win with your hopefully success in building the right culture?
It's hard to say. I think I talked about a revisionist narrative and looking back at things and how they made sense. I don't know how the judges decided, and it may simply be that we were a new name and they wanted to give us some recognition because of that. Who knows? But I'm going to take it.
Well, it's typically modest of you, Chris. So, as an agency, we at Milledgely do a lot of work with venture capital funds, professional services firms, and we know how hard everybody chases these type of wins. They make your investors happy, demonstrate progress, build buzz, give you something to talk about. What do you personally see as the role of kind of awards? Are they nice to have, good morale booster, or do you really see them as major milestones in meeting your commercial objectives?
I think they are very important because it's recognition by peers. It gives you the brand PR alongside other firm names that you want to be thought alongside of. So if you're not there, I suppose it does ask a few questions. So for somebody who's trying to make a name in the market, then I think it's critical that you do get that level of recognition. And then you can use that PR to your advantage. So the submission that we made talked about two things. It talked about our transatlantic work, because that was the category, but it also talked about our culture. And on the night, when they announced, and the winner is a firm who has done all of these big deals, and we thought, it's not us. Can't be us on that basis. But it was. But they didn't mention our culture. But in the written submission, they say, and here is a firm that is looking to do something different from a people perspective.
Is there but in the theme of modesty, is there as well, obviously we talked about imposter syndrome in the day-to-day. Is there an awards version of that where you think, do we actually deserve this? Is it just luck, or do you sort of allow yourself that pat on the back?
The latter. Definitely an imposter syndrome, because we're building something, and we had sort of set ourselves internally the target of winning an award like this in sort of 2-3 years' time. So, and we haven't achieved the things that we want to achieve in that 2-3 years. So that's the imposter element. Is, well, if you're getting recognition now, then let's redefine our goals for the future. What recognition we want for that. But absolutely, it's testament to the work of all of the people here.
And how, in terms of how you feel about it, and your colleagues feel about it, I'm sure you speak a lot, how does it compare, and it may be comparing apples to oranges, a big client win, a promotion, winning the award, are they all much of a muchness, or do they hit differently?
Big client win, getting in new work, building something sustainable is critical, and you can feel, when those things happen, you feel that there is a difference. You feel that you're on a path and you're building, and it's all going in the right direction. This was just it was like a punching the air moment. It was just no way, which is brilliant, but it's not the be all and end all from where we need to be as an organisation.
And when you talk about, because everyone sets objectives, it's rare the business that's going to meet every single one of them, because they're that easy to meet. Why they're your objectives, right? Mm-hmm. But do you think that winning an award like this alters perceptions of success and failure amongst potential clients and rivals, or is it just part of the everyday, hustle and bustle of business?
No, I think it's extremely important that our journey is to, and where we want to get to, involves name recognition, brand elevation, and PR along the way. So this is all hugely intertwined as part of that. So if we hadn't have won this award, we would be looking for next year to see, well, what award categories might we be eligible for in order to get that name recognition. So this is an important stepping stone to continue us on that path.
Well, clearly the key to winning awards is appearing on the show, so I'm sure we're happy to welcome on some of your colleagues. I just wondered, lastly, are there any, it's a couple of months since you did the episode, and obviously it's been a very fruitful few months for you, which probably haven't had any new failures, but I just wondered if you had any reflections now that a couple of months have passed since you did the episode with Vivian and you were so open about your, what you perceived as certain failures in your career.
It is very difficult to continue to communicate ideas and make sense of events that happen within an organisation to the people who are here, to be able to link it back to that strong culture that I talked about before. So it is,
culture's still the key.
Culture's still the key. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Chris, that's great to catch up with you. Congratulations again on such a great award from such a great ocean.
Thank you.
And we'll be following you as an alumni. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Failure Hypothesis, a Meledro Digital production. To find out more about making and appearing in business content with interest, visit our website at meledrodigital.com.